Good morning. We begin today with major geopolitical news as US President Donald Trump is reportedly considering a significant shift in American foreign policy, exploring the possibility of withdrawing the United States from NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This comes amidst a backdrop of growing domestic challenges for his administration, including dissatisfaction with his economic policies and a recent legal setback. President Trump has publicly announced he is weighing a U.S. withdrawal from NATO. In an address to the nation planned for this evening, local time, he is expected to elaborate on his deliberations concerning the country's departure from the defense alliance. However, a unilateral decision by the president would not suffice. Such a move would require a majority vote in Congress. Speaking with the British newspaper, The Telegraph, President Trump stated he was seriously contemplating pulling the United States out of the alliance, later adding that an exit was not negotiable. He asserted that he has never been influenced by NATO, remarking, "I always knew they were a paper tiger, and Putin knows that too, by the way." This declaration is seen as the clearest signal yet from the White House that the US no longer views Europe as a dependable defense partner. This follows several allied nations rejecting President Trump's call to deploy warships to open the Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping lane. Adding to the complexities of foreign relations, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has also hinted at a re-evaluation of the U.S. relationship with NATO following the ongoing Iran war. Speaking on Tuesday local time, in an interview with the U.S. broadcaster Fox News, Secretary Rubio stated, "There is unfortunately no doubt that after this conflict is over, we will have to reevaluate this relationship." He emphasized the need to examine the value of NATO. Secretary Rubio acknowledged his past role as a strong defender of NATO during his time in the U.S. Senate, citing the benefit of European military bases that allowed the U.S. Army to project power globally. However, he questioned the alliance's utility if the U.S. Army could no longer utilize these bases, labeling NATO a one-way street. He pressed the point, saying, "If we need them to allow us to use their Army bases and their answer is no, why are we then in NATO?" Ultimately, Secretary Rubio noted, the final decision on this matter rests with President Trump. Separately, President Trump has also signaled a swift withdrawal of U.S. troops from the Iran war, stating in a Reuters interview that the U.S. would pull out of Iran pretty quickly. He did, however, leave open the possibility of returning for targeted strikes if deemed necessary. Domestically, President Trump faces mounting public dissatisfaction. A new poll conducted by SSRS for CNN reveals significant discontent among U.S. voters, particularly concerning his handling of the economy. Only 31% of respondents expressed satisfaction with President Trump's economic policies, marking a historic low for either of his terms in office. Nearly 80% of those surveyed view the current state of the U.S. economy as poor, with 65% attributing this to President Trump's policies. Satisfaction with his approach to inflation stands at just 25%, a notable drop from 44% just 1 year ago. Even within his own party, President Trump is losing ground. Satisfaction with his economic policies among Republicans has declined by 14 points since January and by 23 points among young Republicans. His overall approval rating has also seen a decrease, falling from 39% in January to 35%. In a legal challenge, President Trump suffered a setback regarding federal funding for public broadcasting. A U.S. federal judge ruled that President Trump's executive order to strip federal funds from the radio network National Public Radio, or NPR, and the television broadcaster Public Broadcasting Service known as PBS was unlawful. District Judge Randolph Moss cited that President Trump's order to end funding by May first aimed to suppress critical viewpoints. While acknowledging the president's right to criticize media coverage, Judge Moss asserted that the president cannot use his authority to exclude broadcasters from federal grants or other funding in retaliation for unpopular statements. The broadcasters welcomed the judgment as a reinforcement of press and speech freedom, while a White House spokesperson dismissed the ruling as ridiculous and indicated potential legal appeals. President Trump had justified the funding cuts by labeling NPR and PBS as arms of the radical left Democratic Party. Despite the ruling, the broadcasters cannot anticipate additional federal funds, as Congress had already approved a retroactive cut of $1.1 billion for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which partially funded NPR, PBS, and numerous local stations. As a result, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting ceased operations at the beginning of this year. Unlike in Germany, public broadcasting in the US relies on a mix of federal funds, advertising, and donations. What's your take on Trump Considers NATO Exit, faces economic backlash and legal defeat? Share your view in the comments. Do you think this will matter in the next news cycle? This video was generated using artificial intelligence,